I think that's part of the challenge of change in the industry. In that construction is a daily battle to solve lots and lots of problems, right? So people
Mhm.
in the industry feel good that they're busy every day solving problems.
Right.
The problem is they're solving the wrong problem. I think they're solving the symptoms, not solving the problem.
Yeah.
But we get stuck in this rat wheel of you know snag list, punch list, do this, do that, got
Right.
all this to do. That's not problem solving, it's firefighting. So we need to get sort of elevate that mindset of, okay, what's causing these symptoms and then solve that problem.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Activating Curiosity. I am Ryan Ware, and today we're going to have an exciting conversation of a group that I have been following for a little while since they first got started. My background coming from that prefabrication side. I just saw something unique in this group, the way they were approaching it, the verbiage they were using, and the background of the founder as well as the gentleman that we're going to talk to today, and how that starts to really bring opportunity to a lot of different areas when it comes to designing and integrating prefabrication within construction projects. So today I have with me Wayne Larson. He is the CEO of PT Blink, and they are located in Sydney, Australia. So hey Wayne, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Ryan. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm appreciative that you were willing to jump on this early for you over in Australia, but this is exciting for me. I think to have this conversation because I want to share a lot of the work that you guys have been doing and get in deep to the conversations. But before we do that and get into the questions, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself, sort of your history and how you got into your role here with PT Blink?
Yeah, sure. My background, I'm actually an industrial engineer by training, not a construction guy. I come from the manufacturing and supply side of the industry. So, 20 plus years in steel manufacture and distribution, aluminium product manufacture and distribution into the construction. And I guess I guess the American nomenclature to be in the design build space where supplying product into GCs to go into design and construct or design and build projects. That sort of journey in history gave me a good sort of understanding of the downstream sort of impacts or challenges of the industry. 6 or 7 years ago, I met Murray, at the founder of PT Blink, and we got into a conversation around the challenges around productivity and waste and cost and time in particular. And from my side of the industry, I saw firsthand the opportunism and the waste and profiteering that takes place in the supply side because of last minute changes or rectification works, that kind of thing that take place. So
Mhm.
a better way of delivering buildings through manufacturing and my lean manufacturing mindset sort of coming together with the structural innovation and technology that the PT Blink had, is a nice fit.
Yeah, so your background, that supply chain, like you said, industrial engineering. Murray, who was the founder, Murray Allen, he was a structural engineer, right? And he founded the
Correct.
company. I'm not going to tell the story of the name because I'll let you do that real quick. But the name PT Blank and just what Murray was seeing because you came in a few years after he got started. Tell a little bit about the name, the history between it, and kind of how that's evolved into what you're doing today.
Yeah, I mean, the core challenge that we're solving for is time. The name Blink comes from effectively blink and it's done. It's all about time. The company itself, so Murray is actively involved in the business. He's a founder, but he's our chairman, and is I guess, the thought leader and innovator around the technology, particularly around the structures piece. Him and his father before him have a long history of innovation in delivering buildings, and that started with clear span structures and post tensioning of steel. So PT in PT Blink stands for post tensioning, and not in the traditional sense of post tension concrete.
Hmm.
what we do and our technology is applying the same philosophy and effectively trying to strengthen steel using post-tension strands. So, the impact of our technology effectively doubles the carrying capacity of steel beams, and that gives us the ability to create very efficient structures, very long clear spans, and that the history of the business is very, very large clear span things like hangars and warehouses. I think 170 meters column free is the biggest spanning building that Murray has previously built. About 8 years ago, it was posed with a challenge and two challenges, one from a property developer and one from the primary steel producer here in Australia. And the
Hmm.
property developer came to Murray and said, you've lived in China for many, many years. He lived in Hong Kong and built buildings all over China for 15 or so years. And they challenged the property developer, that is, challenged him to say, well, I see all these videos of buildings going up in 2 days in China. Why can't we build that fast here in Australia? And at the same time, our steel industry was on its knees because of low cost imports coming in
Hmm.
and that sort of foreign competition. And the steel industry came to us and said, why can't we compete with imports and Chinese production? And those two things sort of converge in that time is the most undervalued commodity in the construction industry. However, we
Hmm.
arrive at that solution, and really that's what all modular prefabrication offsite manufacturing solutions are trying to do, is eliminate waste, and that is both material waste and human time waste.
Hmm.
And if we can solve for time, then that changes the economic outcomes of a project, both from a project financials perspective, but also for the supply chain. Because once time is valued, then all of a sudden you don't have time to wait 16 weeks for windows to come from China. You don't have
Right.
time becomes valued, then all of a sudden time is the biggest risk thing that you need to mitigate. So shorten supply chains, local manufacturing, creating local jobs, and moving existing manufacturers up the value chain to deliver buildings in a different way is what we're all about.
I mean, it's interesting that you started with a developer was kind of coming in with Murray and kind of getting started in that conversation of like, hey, I'm watching this, I'm seeing it. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And you discussed it. You started getting into that problem, right? Some of those challenges. It's time. We don't have enough humans in this industry, whether you're in Australia or you're here in North America, right? Like our industry has been struggling with that for some time. You mentioned trying to solve whether it's the supply chain side. I'm interested in that piece because you started mentioning, hey, he's a structural engineer by background. PT was post tension, the idea of Blink being about speed and kind of shrinking a lot of that time between supply chain and how we as humans are kind of impacted by a lot of those things that goes into a project schedule. So how has, as you've started looking in that from that initial conversation with that developer, what other problems were you starting to notice? You came from that supply side, both in kind of the engineering piece,
Mm.
but beyond like, hey, we're trying to solve for time, you have a developer who had like this insight, like, and I want this, but mindsets tend to change that for other people, other industries, other parts that you're trying to bring together. So talk a little bit more about the overall problem that you're aiming to solve, the things that sort of started to kind of trickle up as you were developing this solution for PT Blank of shortening that supply chain connection piece to the site.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you look at the property developer at one end, who is it's they are the demand side at the end of the day for construction companies, probably not for the
Hmm.
industry. Talk of buyers and occupants is the pure demand side. But if we start with property developers, who are the ones that are going to apply the capital and ideate the project and effectively initiate a project happening, they're looking at it from, if I say, yes, I want to deliver this building today, it's probably 2 or 3 years before I get the keys to that building. And they're saying, well, I'm paying for the site, I'm paying for the cost of carrying, I'm paying for this. And at the end of it, I have to make money out of the project. Otherwise, I can't do another one. And then what that does is all of that hidden cost. So materials cost what materials cost, timber cost
Right.
what timber costs, steel cost what steel costs, concrete cost what concrete costs. So all the fixed material costs are going to be the same, except for what you waste, right? In
Right.
Australia, something like between 15 and 20% of the material that arrives to a construction site ends up in the bin. So there's already, if a building is 50% materials and 50% labor, say, you've already increased your building cost by 10% because you're throwing 20% of your
Right.
materials in the bin. Then you've got all the labor impacts. You've got people sort of stacked up in a sequential process to deliver a building. So if it's a multi-story building, you can't build floor 2 until you've finished floor 1. You can't build floor 3 until you've finished floor 2.
Hmm.
That sequential cycle is the way we've done buildings for more than 100 years. We use the analogy often, and it's a scary one to put out there, that the fastest skyscraper ever built is still the Empire State Building,
Right.
right? That was
Yeah.
96 years ago. So for the last 96 years, we've progressively gotten slower and slower and slower in how we deliver a building. Yeah, that was
Hmm.
13 months and 15 days. That building was built, now 101 floors. Today, that building would take 5 or 6 years to deliver, right? So
Right.
that's a systematic productivity failure. If you look at every other industry, we've progressively gotten better at productivity year on year. Manufacturing has got better, agriculture gets better. Even government services have gotten more productive over the years than where construction has either stagnated or gone backwards. So we're using more money, more materials, more labor to produce the same amount of housing every single year. So we get
Right.
actually worse and worse and worse. That's not sustainable. So you talked before about the labor shortage. We don't actually have a labor shortage. We have a productivity problem. We're failing to get more efficient at delivering and using our resources better, which
Hmm.
every other industry has to do. And that's driving up costs. It's driving up affordability crises. It's creating a whole heap of pressure in the industry that can't be borne. What the result of that is that from the developer all the way through the chain to delivery, industry is set up to effectively be confrontational and aim to shift blame and shift risk. So
Hmm.
it's effectively a contracting challenge of who has the deepest pockets wins, or who has the best lawyers wins. And at the end, you hope to get a building that you're looking for. And we're trying to change that. So when you look at it, time is one thing, or time is the key driver that we're trying to solve for. Get time back into the developer's hands, where the developer is the one that's going to do projects over and over and over again. To
Hmm.
put the time back in their pocket and money back in their pocket means that they can deliver more projects more affordably. To do that, you can't just throw a different widget into the same system and hope you're going to get a better outcome. And that's
Right.
part of the productivity challenges we see is there's so many great tools, but they're so disconnected. So what we do is create a whole heap of complexity in the industry by layering great ideas and innovation on top of each other in a really fragmented way. We haven't actually looked at the system. We're trying to put band-aids on different parts of the process to make that little bit of the process better. But if that doesn't flow into the next stage, then all you're doing is creating another hurdle to get into the next phase, and
Hmm.
another opportunity for delay or error or rework, that kind of thing. So basically said, well, you actually need to change the whole method of delivery from design and build or stick build into a process that looks more like the way we deliver industrialized products, so cars and
Hmm.
aeroplanes, that kind of thing. Our structural technology effectively is a chassis. So we've developed a structural system that is a kit of parts made up of columns, header beams, floor cassettes we call trays, and blade walls. So basically, 4 elements of a building structure that can be configured in different ways to create any architecture. So if you can
Hmm.
take any existing architecture and divide it up into a structural grid that can be manufactured off-site, then you're taking the biggest inhibitor to delivery of a multi-story project, and we're talking multi-story, 4 stories and up.
Hmm.
Multi-story project, uh, take the structure way off the critical path. And when we talk way off the critical path, we're saying instead of doing a floor every 1 to 2 weeks, we're doing 2 to 3 floors per week. So it's a step change in vertical speed, and
Hmm.
doing that in a way that doesn't require shoring and backpropping, doing it in a way that doesn't require scaffolding, and doing it in a way that doesn't require site fixing and reinforcement. So doing as much value adding in the factory as we possibly can, so that fewer resources are required on site for a shorter period of time, and you're getting a reliable geometric datum that you can fix other things to. Once you can
Hmm.
control the geometry of the building, you can control how you manufacture or how you supply into that building. So you're not having to go onto a site measure and understand what that aperture looks like before you can go and make the windows, because you know that that thing is going to be made to precision. You can make the windows at the same time you're making the structure, at the same time you're making internal walls, the bathroom, so on and so forth.
Yeah, so it's a design process, right? You talked about a delivery model. So you're changing into a design integration that's happening utilizing technology that's then
Correct.
linking to it, you mentioned it before, that fragmentation. So you're getting interdependency within teams so that they're starting to connect those dots during the design, speeding up the build. You're talking about a lot of work being done at a much quicker pace, delivering the structure out of that skeleton piece. A lot of things are now coming off project sites quicker. The things that leave a job are coming off quicker because you're still
Correct.
paying for them if they're on the job. And that doesn't just mean humans, it means, like you said, scaffolding or things that are rented or
That's right.
shoring that are driving costs up. So understanding a lot of that, you mentioned, again, it goes back towards that the piece that the developer is really driving it. It's like, hey, I'm paying for all of this, I'm all of these costs that we don't, as designers, don't always think about. We know they exist, but when we're choosing to design a building, I'm going to coming from the architectural world or engineering, like, we have so much impact as designers to help drive that delivery model or
Yep.
that method of construction, right? And that's also where contractors have to come into play, because you're you're working with a group that's going to provide portions of it. It's not
Correct.
necessarily the whole building. So, I'm sure you've seen this, I'm sure your team sees this, but here's a developer that's like, I need this problem solved, because that's who we're all building for, is the humans that are going to go inside of these spaces. But how have you seen, mindsets sort of shift beyond the initial obstacle phase or resistance phase as you're first being introduced, you first start kind of having these discussions with design teams and builders, as well as even supply chain groups that you're starting to work with, like the common obstacles, the common barriers, and then how are you working through that?
Yeah, and it's been a constant effort to change mindsets.
Hmm.
That's really, uh, and we sort of joked about it before about, we're still building buildings the same way that we built the Empire State Building, just with
Right.
better safety, right? The challenge is that, we operate in an industry that is risk averse. It is
Hmm.
high risk because, we're building structures that people want to live in for 40 or 50 years and they can't fall down. So people don't take risks on construction, full stop.
Hmm.
Um, Anyone who wants to do something different to the orthodoxy is seen as risky. And
Right.
that's the challenge with changing a process. So, yeah, the work that we've been doing is de-risking everything. So showing that when you manufacture something and you can check it for geometry, check it for code compliance in terms of its makeup, its materiality, its assembly, that is way less risky than, having 15 guys come to a site and piece by piece build that thing up, and, by the time you come to inspect it, it's already sheeted up and you can't see what's behind the wall.
Right.
Yeah. So that the understanding and the education piece has been fairly significant. And the way we've approached that is we effectively got a methodology we call design, manufacture, integrate, DMI. Everyone has to have an acronym, right? So,
Right.
um, but it is that for a reason. We design it to be manufactured. We manufacture it in a controlled environment, and we integrate it as a kit of parts, and do that through an ecosystem of partners. So we don't manufacture anything ourselves. What we do is we
Right.
license the technology, and we're creating a technology platform for manufacturers, architects, engineers, certifiers, consenting authorities, all that kind of thing, to participate in that ecosystem. And it won't be for everyone. We're not going to have every GC, every builder,
Hmm.
every manufacturer, because some will just say, you know what, I've been doing it this way for a long time. It's worked for me for now. I'm going to keep doing it. Yeah. And our real challenge in our industry is that the industry is full of generally old blokes, right? Old men. And old men, get pretty stubborn as they get older, and they don't want to change, particularly getting close to retirement. Who wants to
Right.
change? And yeah, when we talk about the numbers in the industry, the numbers of people in the industry, the real challenge is that we've got an aging industry, and we're going to have a whole wave of people drop out of the industry, and we've got no one coming in behind to fill that gap. And that's started happening in most OECD countries, and it's going to
Hmm.
continue to accelerate in Australia, in the US, in mainland Europe. And that's a real challenge. So all these people that are saying no to change now are going to, over the next 5 to 10 years, not going to be in the industry anymore. And if we don't
Hmm.
start adopting different ways, one, there's not going to be enough people. We've got a growing global population and a smaller resource pool to deliver projects, and we're doing it in a less productive way. So, our view is that we've actually got a humanitarian crisis
Yeah.
on our doorstep that we're not really addressing because we're arguing over the how, not the why.
Yeah.
We actually need to get beyond the why and know that PT Blink isn't the only answer. Volumetric modular isn't the only answer.
Right.
You know, they're all we're all parts of the answer that has to be implemented across the board to solve a problem, which is we need to be able to deliver enough buildings to house the population.
Yeah, I think, it's very similar to a lot of the conversations that I have. And I
Mm,
think this just expresses that
mm.
humans are humans, whether
Yeah,
they're in Australia, whether they're in
yeah,
North America or anywhere else on the face of the planet. You mentioned the word kind of, we want to de-risk, and we don't want risk. So we find other ways to say, no, thank you. I'll keep doing it the way I've been doing it.
yeah. And
Well,
when we find that you could be in a project, so we could have a developer that Yeah, lots of developers want this. They need
mhm,
this, right? They need that, financially, projects they're finding projects difficult to get through feasibility, not penciling. We experienced it in the US, it's happening here in Australia. And then somewhere through the cohort of people that are involved in a project, could be the architect, could be the engineer, could be the GC, could be a site manager,
mhm.
who at some point there could be 25 out of 26 people that are all waving the flag for this, and one person says, "Hang on, this is risky," and everyone will fall back behind that one person because
Yeah,
no one wants to be the one that's wrong, right? So
right,
they'll all fall back to safety, and that's the real challenge. Is it's too easy to say no, and it's too risky to say yes. So getting to the point where we're seeing it now here in Australia, but I think this is going to become a bigger pattern globally. It's going to be
mhm,
too risky to say no soon because we can't actually get buildings done. So yeah,
yeah,
it's going to that shift that the pendulum is shifting back to we have to do things differently because we can't try to keep doing things the same way. So now
right,
it is, how do we do that in a way that's controlled? How do we do that in a way that we can trust the process, trust the technology? And that's the key is de-risking it so that decision makers can see that, you know what, this is resolved, this is well thought through, this is, structurally sound, this is
mhm.
architecturally sound. We're delivering buildings that people want to live in, can live in, they're healthy, they're safe, and they're durable.
Well, and it's, like I mentioned, it's a very similar conversation. Like, and you said it, kit parts all the way through volumetric. There isn't a
Mm,
silver bullet, but it's it's one of those things that I keep thinking about. Is like, we as a society find that it's easier to, if again, our mindsets want this, so we stay in that lane of known. I hear devil you know is better than the one you don't. Well, all of those things feel true, but as you just alluded to, we're not solving the problem
yeah,
that we're all like what we're actually aiming to solve, which is build the infrastructure for the world, whether it's housing,
yeah,
healthcare, whatever it is, right? So, yes, the way we built the Empire State Building was the right answer for when we built the Empire State Building.
correct.
But if, like you mentioned, if we were to do that today, it would take us years to build, if not
Mm.
decades. Uh, just to get through the planning and get through all
Yes.
the process, right? So humans have made it more complicated. We are the ones in control. We have the agency to work through this. And when I think about it in my career, and when tried to take on something new, I was always a risk. Designing a building was always a risk, regardless of the method
Yeah,
of construction that I thought about. But I keep thinking about this in a way of, you said, trust the software, trust the process, trust all these things. I want people to, like, we should trust our own ability
yeah, absolutely.
to go into this space that we've never been to before. And that it's still designing a building. It's just that and this is where it gets tough. It's that slowing down period of that new area, that new thing that we're all going to learn. Like you
Yeah.
mentioned, the design to manufacturing, that integration piece to use a different delivery model, to use this new method of construction. Well, it's not even new. This method of construction that has been around for a long time, that it's new to us.
Yeah.
But when you are on a team, and then when I think about it, like you mentioned, 25 people say go, one says don't, and then they get behind because of that reason. But the opportunity is really to have empathy towards the one human that has a fear, and it's not because they're weak, it's just they're human. So they
Bring them
feel
along.
there's risk, there's this, there's I'm having this feeling. Like if everyone is working together to understand this new thing you're going to go through, slowing down, have empathy, ask questions, create that psychological safety to allow you
Mm,
to navigate it, then it's not just, hey, we're doing it for the project. It's, hey, we're trying to build more housing. Hey, we're
no,
trying to build more healthcare, whatever it is that we're trying to design. So I I'm glad you kind of shared that, because again, I think that's universal. We know it for prefab or technology. But when I think about change management, think about our mindsets. It's inviting one, providing psychological safety for ourselves, but inviting in everyone else into that zone
yeah,
that allows for questions to be asked, slowing down to make sure everyone's on board. And you've probably have seen this too, Wayne. I'm guessing as new groups came on and the first time they tried it, like, hey, that won't be your best effort.
yeah.
So don't punt on it. Don't give up after that.
And we've started. I mean, we in our first few projects, we had new. It, let's call them consultants, architects, engineers, certifiers
Mhm.
coming into the project and learning as they go on a project. We now got to the point where we're starting to bring new people on behind the live project. So they're seeing a project happen from a distance in a low risk
Mhm.
way. They're watching it and learning from those that have done it before rather than trying to be pioneers on their own project. So
Right.
yeah, we bring the trying to bring the industry along behind those that have done it and build a wave of adopters rather than try and do it live in a project where what you don't want to ever get to is an experience where the pressure of the project becomes the driving factor or the driving force that pulls people away from challenging change
Right.
and going through that psychological process, because then the risk of their their part of the process becomes greater than what they're trying to achieve. I think the other point is that really what we're kind of, and we don't state it sort of loudly, but definitely a guiding part of our ethos is that we're trying to create change for the next generation, not just for us. Yes,
Right.
we've got a commercial imperative, but we actually see this as part of the answer, not just because hey, there's an opportunity, there's a niche in the market, let's go tackle that and make money. It's
Right.
about how do we actually change things for the better? We don't want to see landfill full of construction waste. We don't want to
Right.
see trees cut down and then thrown back in the bin. We don't want to see young men taking their own lives because of the pressure of construction. We don't want to.
Yeah.
There's a whole heap of things in our industry that is so dysfunctional and so broken that has to change.
Mhm.
We look at uh, and it's not always the greatest example. But we look at companies like Boeing who can build a 737 in 18 days. I mean, $50 million and 600,000 parts or 800,000 parts in an aeroplane, but they can put that together, assemble that, and have it flying in 18 days. Why does it take us 2, 3, 4 years to build a building of similar complexity? Same risk
Right.
profile. You still got people going in a plane every single day and not questioning boarding a plane. You don't question how long did this thing take to build and how many arguments were
Right.
you trust the process, you trust the manufacturing, you trust the quality control, and that's the way. It's just the accepted way, and that comes back to controlling geometry, controlling design, controlling manufacturing. And when you boil it down, construction is the world's biggest cottage industry. It's probably the last big cottage industry left. Right? We have
Mhm.
artisan tradespeople who come together on an ad hoc basis to deliver a building by getting materials, tools and labor to the site where they want the building to be, right? It's like coach building en masse. We don't build cars that way anymore for a reason, right? You don't order a order a car and they turn up with a foundry to pour the engine block in your garage, right? That just doesn't work that way. We create sub-assemblies. We have a reliable geometric datum being a chassis, and we put parts on that thing to give you a car. I love I'm a manufacturing guy, right? So I love the videos of the Volkswagen plant in Wolfsburg, Germany,
Yeah.
because you can see there you'll have a chassis going down a production line, and you'll have 25 chassis lined up. But first one's a Volkswagen, the next one's a Skoda, then there's a Porsche, then there's an Audi. It's all the same chassis. It's just a different kit of parts being applied to that chassis. And that's the ethos.
Mhm.
Like, lots of manufacturers providing assemblies that you can create any building. All you have to do is choose your kit of parts.
Right. Right. Well, I think you said a lot of important things there, especially when I want to go back to something you talked about is leaving a legacy. Like you said, hey, we're not just doing this to come in and make money.
Mm,
We feel like if we aren't part of a solution, right? We're
mm,
not the silver bullet. We're not everything to everyone. But if we need to build something for the future generations to be thinking about how
yep,
they're going to be designing and building in order to address some of these large problems. Not just, hey, this is how a project goes together. It's
mm,
literally what is it we're doing? We are designing and building globally to keep, to give people shelter, to provide them with spaces to heal, spaces to learn, whatever it is, that being able to get enough of that is out there for
yep,
the world's population is critical. Not only that, it's power infrastructure. It's all the things that we need,
yeah,
right, to survive as humans. So I think it's powerful to say, we don't always say it, but we just think there's something bigger here, which I
sure.
talk about with other guests is what is the legacy that you want to leave, right? What is it? Even for site superintendents, like you've built the world, the way you've built it, your legacy is how you leave the industry as well. How do we begin as we're thinking about retiring and walking away from our businesses of like, will the next generation be able to maintain what we've been doing in its current state, or
Mm,
have situations changed that we need to do something different? And I think that's what you're getting to, Wayne, is that what you've been working on, you and Murray and team is like, hey, like we have got to find a way to bring this design process to get these kit parts out through your mind, how supply chains work,
mhm,
right? And getting costs down and utilizing, materials that are regional or local to projects and connecting manufacturers, connecting architects. So I think it's unique. And this is something that I find unique about your system is yes, it's a technology and it's a process, it's a mindset shift, it's all of these things. And it's a tool that architects and engineers, manufacturers, and other integrators, they're part of it to
correct.
solve this problem that you're talking about. So it's not like a lot of times we think about things like, hey, you're going to do something and we just want you, like we're selling you a product. It's like, no, we're trying to elevate your careers and the
Absolutely.
way you're delivering projects. So it just is a unique model that I find very intriguing of like, it's not just Revit or Inventor, it is this whole other way of starting to look at it because you're combining that with all of the other tools that are going on in the industry as
Yeah,
well, right?
absolutely, what we wanna do is elevate, particularly the supply chain in the industry, up the value chain, right? So
Mhm.
if an architect starts a project, we don't want the architect designing to 30% and then getting thrown off the project to get a cheaper architect in to come and finish it. We want them to own the project end to end. We want a manufacturer not to just sell some sticks of steel with some holes in it. What we
Right.
want them to do is actually sell a product and do more value adding. So, their share of wallet increases. They're utilizing their sunk cost in their capital and their people in a better way, and a more efficient way. Rightly or wrongly, we see the best way to improve afford or cost and productivity in the process is to make better utilization of the capital that's already been deployed.
Mhm.
So if there's a timber manufacturer or steel manufacturer and they're working 1 or 2 shifts a day, they're doing very, very low value adding, they're doing some processing, not doing any complexing or assembly, there's an opportunity for them to do more with their existing equipment. They're already paying rent on their buildings. They're
Right.
already paying depreciation on their capital. So use it more, make it sweat, make them money, and that brings their unit cost down. But gives them more value. They're now starting to move into, I'm no longer a material supplier, I'm now a product manufacturer. And then
Hmm.
they start to develop their own IP. Their IP is in process controls, quality control, product development, all that kind of thing, get them up the intelligence chain and value chain of the industry. So they're actually producing about, most manufacturers have a lot of IP. They just don't realize it and they don't value it because they're
Yeah.
so used to being on the end of a 3 or 4 party tender at the lowest price wins, and that is not a way to drive the industry forward. It's not always the lowest price that gives you the best
Right.
cost, right? And that's an argument that goes around in circles. But the legacy of not valuing that is that those companies eventually go out of business because they become a commodity supplier of raw materials, and that is very, very easy to supplement from low cost countries or low cost sources, right? But
Hmm.
IP and process and quality is not easily sort of copyable or replaceable.
Hmm. Yeah. So like you said, you're elevating all of the supply chain within the process.
Yeah,
You're giving opportunity to architects, and I can think about that. Right. It's not, no one's replacing anyone. It's just,
no,
I think you said this so well, which is, it's not just a labor shortage, or it isn't a labor shortage. And I talk about this all the time. We're not utilizing the labor force we had more
correct.
effectively. And that's what you're saying as well, is like, how do we get the most out of everyone? And I don't mean work 80 hours a week. I mean,
No,
like, we should be at a point where we're probably actually working less, producing a lot more
correct.
in society, in society. But this is one of those things that you're looking at it again and saying, we're trying to give everybody this tool, the software and technology built on the DMI process, the design, manufacturing, integration. You are filling a pipeline. You're having people watch projects happening. So you're those that are curious, they can go see this happening, this process become part of the pipeline of who can start to think about building with these delivery models and delivery methods, utilizing kit of parts and utilizing prefab. And it's one of those things that I think, if they are using PT blank and then they're part of that process, right? If you guys are part of it and they're on another project and you guys aren't on it, it doesn't mean everything's a throwaway, because
Correct.
now they're learning the language, they're learning the questions, they're
Yeah.
learning, yes, every sort of, whether it's single trade, the multi trade, that's going to change
Mm.
sort of how things work.
Yep.
But you're building a stronger foundation for yourself, for your team, for your business to go address that developer's problem, which is, why is this taking so long to build the building I'm asking you to do?
Yeah. Correct. And we generally see time savings of between 40 and 60% on
Hmm.
a vertical project. Now,
Hmm.
even if cost is exactly the same, if you halve the time, you're doubling the IRR for the developer, right? He can deploy his money twice as fast. So
Right.
even if he makes no more profit out of the project, now we generally see somewhere between 5 to 15% cost savings in the project, and that's
Hmm.
mostly time based stuff and waste based savings.
Hmm.
As I say, a ton of steel costs what a ton of steel costs. But if you can
Right.
use 5% less of it, then you're saving some money. So a little bit less cost, a lot less time. The developer has the opportunity to make effectively twice as much money because they're doing twice as many projects.
Right.
So that's the commercial outcome. And change doesn't happen. Yeah, comes back to it's the economy stupid, right? Change will
Right.
change will not happen unless there's an economic driver for it.
Right.
Whether it be a transition to green energy, whether it be a low carbon future, whether it be a system wide change in the construction industry, unless there's an economic imperative, a financial imperative, it won't happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to create the financial imperative to create the desire for the change, to go through that learning and change process. There has to be a reason for it, and that is economic at the end of the day. Yes, there'll be some, and for us,
Mhm.
there's some obviously higher views of around not putting rubbish in the ground and
Right.
all of those additional benefits that come from, but without it being financially driven, the demand side just won't have it. So it has to drive a financial imperative, and
Right.
that's across the industry.
Well, and I think that's very true. And I think right now I would almost question, like, I think we're already there. We're just not recognizing how much it's already costing us to
It is.
do it this way.
It's all
Like,
hidden cost, right? You can't
yeah,
see it. There's no line item in a cost plan that says rework, waste, and labor excess labor time. It's
yeah,
all it's all buried everywhere. The studies that have been done in the order of 20 to 30% of the labor on a site is for rework and rectification. That's
right,
effectively doing work twice.
right.
The first thing that turns up to a construction site after a concrete pour is the guy with the concrete saw, right? He goes there to
Yeah.
cut the bits out that didn't get formed up right,
I
or
was going to say a dumpster, but you're right. Yeah.
that's we go and
Yeah.
do all this work, and then we do it again because it's not quite right, or it's not to
Yeah.
plan, or we have to go and adjust the next floor because the floor below is 2 inches below where it should be. We're always making up I guess, accounting for the errors as the
Right.
building goes up, and at all costs.
I think that's all very true. I think it's also that the productivity, you mentioned this, and just all of that going back and redoing just means we're not building another building, which is what the developer
Correct.
wants. So again, it's all connected into this. Well, if we're designing it the same way that we were 100 years ago, for an Empire State Building to be built, which I'm guessing
Yep.
was far fewer drawings than we would have today as
Yes.
well, right? Like, if we're not looking at it like, hey, we have to figure out how to build more
Yep.
things while bringing costs down. The current situation, the current model, that's not happening
Mhm.
because electricians are turning work down, even though
Yep.
they may not say it. Like, if they could double their revenue without doubling headcount, they do it.
Yep.
Mechanical subs would do it. And I'll tell you, like, electricians are prefabricating, so is mechanical. Like, they see it. They see the advantage in
Yep.
its single trade so it doesn't impact a lot of people. Structural systems, to architectural. Like architectural, anytime it gets into this multi-trade and it becomes this what feels like a heavier lift to get it integrated into a design,
Yep.
that's I don't know, from my background, that's where I see a lot of the friction points. And then we've tried it and it didn't work out well. So then there's, again, that pain that they felt. But coming back towards what we are designing today, what a building that is being designed today, we are already overpaying for it. And we could have pulled back and thought differently about designing and how the methodology, the delivery model to the method of construction, all the different ways that we could be bringing people in earlier, like you're saying, going through the integration,
Mm.
and delivering kit of parts all the way through whatever volumetric to how you're going to build. Like, the first time won't be the lowest cost, but the more we do it, we're going to start seeing those developers being more willing to build more. Capital is going to become more available to
Yeah.
go do it. We're going to start solving the housing shortage issue, which is enormous across the globe. And you can talk about this too, but the US, like, I lived in California. I mean, we were hundreds of thousands of units shy every
Mhm.
year.
Yep.
We can't catch up to it in this current state. So maybe I'm getting a little too excited with that, but I just think coming back to what you said about affordability, like, we are in control as an industry to reevaluate what is it that we are doing, not just the process in which we're doing it. It's how do we answer that question for that developer and be part of the solution where it is new, we haven't done it, but we take pride in building a legacy industry. We take pride in that learning moment. We go through that journey together to shift right now, this industry towards
Yep.
a future that is addressing a lot of this. So I guess that leads me to the question because we've talked a lot about like what it can mean. So let's just go a little bit in an opposite direction of like, okay, Wayne, if we, what do you see in your mind and how does PT blank kind of see it or even Murray, like if we don't start solving this, like what is the cost to everyone else? not just the industry, but to everyone else that we live with in our communities.
Yeah, look, I mean, I already said, I mean, I've got two teenage, almost adult children, and in Sydney, they will struggle to be able to afford to buy a house in their lives. I
Hmm.
mean, in Australia, we have a high percentage of home ownership. 70 or 80% of the population owns their own home. It's almost a born rite of passage in Australia to
Yeah.
work towards home ownership. We're not a big build to rent or multifamily renting community, although it is growing, and that's being driven by affordability. So there's a bit of a shift towards away from individual ownership into institutional ownership, and I think that's a scary proposition for wealth creation and wealth
Hmm.
generation and end of life security, financial security. My girls are already saying it. I'm never going to afford a house.
Yeah.
One, it starts to make me and my wife worry that the kids are going to try and knock us off a bit earlier than we want to go and try, try and get a hold of the house, but
Right.
and get
Plan
that
B.
plan B. But it's a cultural challenge that the whole psyche of particularly our Australia has been driven around owning your own home, having your
Right.
own backyard, raising a family in that space. So that's changing from a cultural perspective. But that then changes the whole how do you grow wealth through life? What are your investment vehicles? What is your retirement
Hmm.
strategy? Because if it's not around real estate and home ownership, what does that look like, and where's the funds then flow to? And
Right.
that's something that is particularly challenging. I think at a broader, and I touched on this before, I think we've got a more fundamental issue is we're not going to be able to provide shelter for the growing population. Our population is
Right.
growing faster than our housing stock. In Australia, we've got governments that have promised 1.2 million homes over the next 5 years. We're already 40% behind that target, and
Hmm.
we're going to be hundreds of thousands of homes behind that target. Account for the homes we need today. There's something like 2 million dwellings short just for um, you know, rental demand, social housing, emergency accommodation, that kind of thing that is needed right here, right now. So we're probably more like 3 to 4 million houses behind or homes behind our target than
Right.
the 1.2 that the government's targeting. And that's just to provide adequate shelter. And we're a first world country. We're an OECD first world country. You then move to the third world. I mean, what happens in the Ukraine once the fighting stops? What happens
Right.
in Turkey to rebuild after earthquakes? What happens in the Middle East after the fighting stops, or in Israel and Gaza? These mass rebuilds will take resources. The Middle East and Saudi Arabia is taking all of the low cost construction resources into building mega projects and giga projects in the Gulf states. So
Right.
where does it all come from? It's become a bit of a Hunger Games of all the rich nations trying to bring labour in, but it's a pool that's dwindling. It's a shallow
Right.
pool. We're fighting over the same limited resource pool. So there is no other way other than to change. We have to change to something and change to other things, other ways. It's
Hmm.
just a matter of getting on and doing it. And I think that the real challenge in manufacturing, you have a very short product cycle, right? You start a product at 9 a.m. By 9:05, you've finished that product, and
Right.
you can review and refine and address and improve on a fairly quick cycle time, and get your learnings sort of recorded, and changes adopted and measured fairly quickly. In construction, that cycle time is quite long. So
Right.
even if we halve the time, we're still talking 12 or 18 months before you get to the
Right.
end of the cycle to then be able to say what worked, what didn't work, and improve. And that, I think, is part of the challenge of moving moving the industry. It's a slow moving industry because
Right.
projects are quite long duration. It does take time to manufacture. Even if we're doing it
Hmm.
as fast as we can, it's still going to take some time.
Yeah, you talked about it. You said putting a project together, there's an ad hoc team that kind of comes together
Yeah,
potentially once and they're never going to work together again. They
yeah,
may. And that makes it challenging. The duration between projects to share on those lessons learned as you're going through. Yes, that's all fair. And like you said, just trying to shift and elevate, learning each time to keep getting
mm,
productivity higher. But the thing that you shared about whether it's wars or whatever, I think about, the fires in California,
Yeah.
and what it was the beginning of last year,
Mm.
or there's fires every single year. There is natural disasters happening
Yep.
everywhere
Yep.
that are destroying homes, destroying buildings,
Yep.
destroying cities. And again, that's another area of friction that we're
Yeah.
fighting for
And
those
just
resources to build.
that's right. And just age of buildings. There's going to be 3 to 5% of existing building stock will have to be replaced every year as well, just
Right.
because it degrades over time. So
Right.
that won't go away. That is going to, and as the population grows, that pressure example,
Yeah.
it's an exponential pressure point.
Yeah. And it's going to raise other costs, right? I mean, it isn't just like, hey, the cost to build it, the cost of energy. You said something, I think. I have two young sons as well, and I was talking to another guest about this as well. The the next generation, and I here in the US, like, we talk about the American dream, and most people feel that that never existed. It was a pursuit. It existed post World
Mhm.
War II
Uh-huh.
for a lot of people because we cranked out a ton of housing. But
Yep.
we also shifted from plaster to drywall in that time period, did some manufacturing and some other ways that we were kinda looking at building,
Mm.
but, like, we haven't had a boom like that,
Yep.
and there is pressure right now. There is That's what I would think we were kinda talking about before, is this financial pressure exists.
Yep.
Can't get financing, can't get insurance, can't get enough built. Like, when will be that moment where the pain of learning something new and the risk of the new thing suddenly is so minute compared to the long-term risk of us not
Yeah. Correct.
being willing participants in it?
I think we're there now. I think
Yeah,
we're at that tipping point where the risk of not doing something different is getting smaller than the risk of doing something different, if you know what I mean?
right,
So it's the
right.
other way around, greater than the risk of not doing different. So I think the risk of the status quo is becoming the bigger risk, particularly in this
Yeah,
country. Finances are starting to get in behind different ways of delivery, which has been the key inhibitor. Banks in
mhm,
particular are the kings of being risk averse, and they would always default to you have to have this, you have to have this, you have to have something that's been done before. Um,
right.
you know, they're starting to see, well, one, they can't lend because there's not enough builders to actually deliver the projects the way they want to. So they're starting to see the problem. Again, it becomes a financial imperative. If they can't
Right,
lend, they're not earning interest. Well, therein drives a problem. That drives the whole cycle. We also have, I guess, another fundamental problem in that the economies are stacked against bringing down housing prices.
yeah,
And I'll say that because banks effectively underpin the economy, and banks are normally underpinned by mortgage-backed securities. So
yeah,
if the bank's lending book devalues, that's a problem. That's a problem, globally.
mhm,
So I think the best we can hope for is slowing the growth of price, and letting wages and inflation catch up with that part, the real estate asset cycle, because, I think we've got a bigger problem of, you know, probably most of the OECD countries are effectively living in a Ponzi scheme of
yeah.
real estate backed lending that no one wants to actually look under the hood and see what's really there. It's GFC on a grand scale.
Yeah. I mean, 2008 was rough, with the housing crisis here in the States, which threw off the global market. And that came from some other bad
Yep.
actors that and things that were going
Yep.
on with
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
derivatives and banks and all of the stuff that was happening with the loans. But you're right that there is this little, whether it's a Ponzi scheme, but like we all talk about a housing bubble. Oh, the housing bubble is going to hit. Well,
Well, it can't. Governments won't allow it. The governments can't. Every government would collapse if they let the housing bubble burst.
yeah, exactly. So that can't happen, but we hear it here now. It's like, hey, we don't want to see the prices of homes go down. But that all may be true, or maybe to keep the economy running, we have to figure that out. But like that doesn't mean that we can't
Correct.
also be, as an industry,
Yep.
looking at our opportunity to, as you're saying, look at these methods of construction, look at, PT blank as an opportunity as an architect or an engineer to become part of the process, become part of that
Yep.
integration piece that that does change how we're delivering projects, that
Yep.
does look at it in a way that helps. And I think we didn't hit on it much, but you did hit on the capacity piece for factories. And I think that's the other side of it, is that you guys are trying to help as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it is by being able to produce more and getting that cash flow better for those factories, which, people don't want to take something new on because they're not sure if the factory is going to be around by the time their
Yeah.
project happens or getting it in the pipeline. So it's
No, I mean,
solving other things like that
yeah.
as well.
And you look at some of the big failures, the Katerras of the world. They were trying to solve the problem with a blunt force instrument in
Right.
some respects by owning the whole vertical, owning the whole supply chain.
Right.
We are at the other end of the spectrum. We don't want to own the supply chain. We want a cooperative supply chain that comes in and benefits from the volume that comes through. On the demand side, we've got property developers that need to deploy capital, and if we've got manufacturers that have capital that they want to fill, then yeah, it's almost a match made in heaven. Our job is to join those dots and join the technologies so that they can do more valuating to fill that capacity that gives the product that the developers want.
Right. Right. So Wayne, then, been a great conversation. I think that I always want to kind of understand, after we've talked about, what does it mean if we don't solve this problem,
Mm,
into, you're the CEO of PT Blank. Murray has big vision. You guys are talking about legacy.
mm.
So with that, like, what do you believe success looks like for the industry, and that the part that you're playing in it, but the part that obviously you're talking about with others playing, what does that success look like?
I think success looks like that we are able to locally manufacture housing or homes as a kit of parts. So multiple manufacturers manufacturing parts to make housing that puts control back into the developer's hands, so that
Hmm.
they are the ones driving the process, choosing the products, choosing the manufacturers, and bringing together effectively like Lego blocks. That's I think
Yeah.
what success looks like, and what that means, I guess, is that we have control over cost escalation. We have control over waste. We're not burning resources in terms of time, capital, land, and human resources the way we do now in the industry. I think that just has to change.
Yeah. Yeah, creating a better industry for everybody that is in it now, and kind of wherever they are on their journey and their career, but also potentially building that future
100%. Yeah.
legacy that others can and want to come into, right? They
Yeah.
want to come in and they want to try to be part of problem solvers, which is why we all got into this. We
Yeah. Yeah.
we wanted to solve very big problems. We liked I love to design. I love all the
Mhm.
pieces and parts about design and being an architect, and like you said, it's providing that platform for others to go have
I think
success as well.
I think that's part of the challenge of change in the industry, in that construction is a daily battle to solve lots and lots of problems, right? So people
Mhm.
in the industry feel good that they're busy every day solving problems.
Right.
The problem is they're solving the wrong problem. I think they're solving the symptoms, not solving the problem. And
Yeah.
but we get stuck in this rat wheel of, you know, snag list, punch list, do this, do that,
Right.
all this to do. That's not problem solving, it's firefighting. So we need to sort of elevate that mindset of, okay, what's causing these symptoms, and then solve that problem. And
Yeah.
so going up and up, just need to elevate that thinking up and up and up until we get to the system-wide sort of change.
Yeah. Well, I think that's well said. Is like, we don't that's what we're trying to get people out
Right.
of, is that the busyness, the thing that
Mm.
that is burdensome to all of us, that we're
Yep.
all exhausted by, like,
Mm.
constantly doing. But the reason they got in is a lot of the problems we've been talking about
Yep.
that they want to be a part of. And I think what we're the discussion we've been having is really about this invitation into the opportunity for them to take a part in it,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Pause for a moment, create your environment that is empathetic, it's not about being weak asking for help. It's about asking for help and saying, I want to solve this problem, but I
Yep.
don't know enough about prefabrication or how I can actually be a stronger advocate for this change. So with that, then, Wayne, if somebody is listening, and this is why we have the podcast, we want individuals who they're curious enough, they realize the rat race that they may be in the middle of, or they're just like, you know what, I have been of resistor. That's okay. They're listening. Wayne, what are some things they could do, some next step or action items that you would recommend that they could do if they are curious?
But if they're curious about what we're doing, then absolutely reach out, check out our website, ptblink.com. There's registration links on there, and we will get back in contact uh, with you directly. But there's also a wealth of reading material on there. You know what our process looks like, what our philosophy is, what our structures and technology does and enables, and that's from both sides of the equation on the manufacturing side and also on the property developer side.
Hmm.
I think you know the best thing that we can do as practitioners is have an inquisitive mindset. Look for change, look for something different. It's coming anyway, so I'm on board to it and inform ourselves of what's out there, what's different, what's new, what's coming, and how do we participate? Or kind of always say it's going to take lots of people to say yes to get change to happen, right? So the more you can actually look at something that's different and say yes to it, that's going to create a momentum shift.
Yeah. Well, that's great. We will definitely share all of your information in the show notes so that they could take a look at PT Blank. I know that you've been doing a lot of work in Australia. We didn't even get into it, but you guys are in progress for North America, the US, and other locations, Europe, and that expansion. So we definitely want listeners who are in those regions to still kind of take a look at it. Take a look at the site. As Wayne mentioned, reach out, get in line, like get in line, be the pipeline, be that person. So Wayne, I appreciate the time. I know that based off of our conversation now, we could go forever talking about how we can really address this. But I think you guys have, what I've seen from the time when he first started in 2016 and kind of evolved in 2020 and then 2021 releasing the DMI, the design manufacturing and integration. You guys are evolving, you're continuing to learn, you're continuing to expand, you're growing your resources with architects, engineers, and fabricators as well as other integrators. So I'm appreciative of all the work you guys are doing at PT Blank to help move this industry forward. Look at the problem that we're all aiming to solve, which is how do we get more housing? How do we build more infrastructure such that we can all have an opportunity to live that dream and own a home as well as feel safe within our own countries and communities. So I appreciate it, Wayne. Thanks for your time and thanks for being a part of Activating Curiosity. So that was the episode with Wayne Larson, CEO of PT Blink. And it was founded by, we mentioned this before, Murray Ellen, who is actually a structural engineer, and PT standing for post tension, Blink standing for speed. But I wanted to have them on because, again, they're in the prefabrication area, but they're not in the United States, which is where I'm located. They are in Australia. And as we had the discussion, we came to the same realization that we do in most episodes is that we're all human and we all struggle with change, something new, something we've never seen before. And the solution and the things that they're bringing together in this vertical space of stacking and being able to build structures in order to build housing so that he can again address the housing situation, which is what we want to do for future generations and current generations and changing the industry, but also producing more infrastructure that starts with each of us who are in this arena of the architectural engineering and construction industry to step back, provide ourselves a space to think about how we're designing and planning buildings today. And he brought up a great example. The Empire State Building was constructed over 100 years ago, and we could never build it in the time frame that we built it then. We could not build it today. So we have to start asking different questions of why is that the case? What situations have changed? What is different now than it was 100 years ago? How do we as individuals really begin to play a part in addressing the problems we're discussing? Which isn't the fire drills that we find ourselves in. It isn't those things that make us feel like we don't have time to learn. It is to be able to step back and breathe and say, I got into this industry for list the reason. I want to help solve this problem, list it. This is why I want to be a part of it. And then once you ask those questions of yourself and have the answers, think about how situations have changed. Think about how you can play a part that you want to in helping lead this construction industry and leaving this legacy that you want to leave behind. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I know we don't get into the technology that they're producing. It is, you can see that, you can go to their website, but there's something bigger here that they're aiming to do. And I just think that as listeners and as all of us in this industry, like we know how to research, we know how to ask those questions when we're at that point. But what we don't think about is the cost we're paying right now as individuals, as communities, as nations, and as a planet to continue to design and build the way we're building today. It is costing us something, and that is what we wanted to kind of have a dialogue about. So I hope that all of you are able to, again, give yourself that space, take the time, ask those questions, think about why you're in the industry and what makes you most proud about being in the industry, and what would you really like to achieve and the legacy you would like to leave. So until next time, I hope that you continue to stay well, and I hope that you continue to activate curiosity within yourselves as well as curiosity within others. The Activating Curiosity podcast is brought to you by Connective Consulting Group and Connective Coaching, part of the Curiosity Building Experiences. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss a conversation. Share the podcast with your network and help us bring more curiosity into the construction industry. Interested in becoming a guest or a sponsor? Visit us at activatingcuriosity.com for more details. Until next time, keep leading with curiosity.